Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today we're going to answer one of your questions about why sometimes shell splashes are different colors. So aiming battleship caliber guns at a moving target is a difficult proposition. It's even more difficult when you throw multiple calibers of guns and multiple ships at the same target ship. At that point, you don't know which shells are coming from your gun, which are coming from another gun on your ship, and which are coming from another ship entirely. So you have absolutely no idea how to make adjustments. That's part of how battleships evolved into what they were. Originally, you had pre-dreadnought type battleships that had guns of all sorts of calibers. The battleship Oregon is probably the most famous American example. She has 4 13-inch guns, 8 8-inch guns, some 7-inch guns, some 6-inch guns, some various smaller things. And during the Spanish-American War, she is firing all of these guns at Spanish cruisers off Santiago de Cuba. And her accuracy is less than 2%, even though the range is relatively short. There are a number of causes for this, but one of the big ones is you can't adjust the fire for your different sized guns. Obviously, your 8-inch guns are firing a lighter projectile. They have to have a higher trajectory to get the same range as your 13-inch guns, so you have to make different adjustments. But an 8-inch shell splash and a 13-inch shell splash 5 miles away are really hard to distinguish. And then you add in the rest of the American fleet that's shooting at the Spanish ships, and just forget about it. You're expending a ton of ammunition for a very small number of hits. So they decide to get rid of all of those extra intermediate caliber guns and just put on more main battery turrets. And then you see an action like Jutland, where 2 fleets are supposed to line up next to each other, and you're just supposed to start firing at your opposite number in the line. That wasn't entirely successful. The Germans didn't show up with as many ships as the British, so some of the British ships had to double their fire. Other ships miscounted where the enemy was in the line, because the lines aren't just sailing parallel, they're doing all sorts of weird maneuvers, and so you end up with some ships not getting shot at all, some ships being shot at multiple ships. And despite more modern gun arrangements and more modern fire control, the accuracy was still relatively poor. So die packs were added to shells. On Iowa-class battleships, the die packet is about 1.5 pounds, and the way I understand it, it's just like a paper baggie with some powdered dye in it of a specific color. Each ship is issued a different color, and this goes into the nose of the shell, and when that hits the water and misses, the nose breaks away, exposes that dye to the water when there's the explosion going off, and so the water column, instead of being this white frothy thing, comes out a specific color. It's worth pointing out that while they're supposed to be 1.5 pounds, these shells and the explosives they have aren't necessarily all the exact identical weight. It's important for them to be the same weight so they perform the same when you're firing them at a target. So the dye powder can be up to 3 pounds to even out the proper weight of the shell. I can't think of any situations in which American ships during World War II did fire their shells at the same ship as other ships. You've got situations like Second Guadalcanal, where Washington is fighting Kirishima. It's pitch black. They're not using the colored dye. Even if the shells have the dye packets in them already, they're not using them at night. They're using radar. Suragawa Strait, you've got 6 American battleships firing at 1 enemy battleship. They're using radar. It's at night. Engagements like Casablanca, where we're firing at Jean Bart in port. As far as I know, American battleships, Massachusetts in particular, are not firing colored shells. However, there are a couple of instances where other countries use dye-packeted shells that we're aware of. So for example, same battle off Casablanca, some of the French positions were firing projectiles at the cruiser Augusta, which was Patton's flagship. And at least one of the batteries was using the color yellow for their dye packet. So there were these yellow explosions all around Augusta. And according to some stories, Patton gets soaked in this yellow dyed water and it damages his uniform. Another instance is during the Battle off Samar, when the Japanese fleet is firing on the American escort carriers and destroyers of Taffy 3. Americans report that the Japanese are firing at them in Technicolor. Remember, these are carrier and destroyer guys. They don't have the dye packets, so they're not used to this. And there's these big columns of bright fountains of water exploding all around their ships. So that is a perfect instance of why you do this. Oftentimes, your ships are grouped into divisions, and those divisions use similar sized guns. So you can't even be like, oh, well, this one's firing that size guns, this one's firing. You intentionally group like ships together because they have similar characteristics. So in battle, they can engage ships at the same range. In port, it's easier to repair them because they use the same parts. So this is one of the reasons why you do different colored dye packets. So the American dye packets during World War II for the 16-inch guns are as follows. The color orange is allocated to the battleship Iowa, the battleship Washington, and the battleship Colorado. The color blue is allotted to the battleship New Jersey, the battleship South Dakota, and the battleship Maryland. The color red is allocated to the battleship Missouri and the battleship Indiana. And the color green is allotted to the battleship Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Massachusetts. And finally, the color white, which is to say no dye packet at all, is given to Alabama and West Virginia. Yes, so you'll notice that each of the Iowa-class battleships has a different color. The Iowas are most likely to operate together because they operate at a higher speed than the other battleships. They can do 33 knots instead of 27. So that division is all using different colors. Meanwhile, let's look at orange, for example. You got Iowa, she's an Iowa-class battleship. You've got Washington, a North Carolina-class battleship, so one of the 27-knot ships, and Colorado, a Colorado-class battleship that only makes 21 knots. So these three ships are not going to operate together in the same squadron under the same admiral because they're completely different speeds. So it's okay to reuse those colors. And remember, there's a finite number of colors. You can't make somebody red-orange, somebody pink, somebody orange. Like, there's just not enough gradation there when you're looking at a target that's 10, 15, 20 miles away. If you want to see a artistic representation of ships being fired at in Technicolor, check out Naval Institute Press's graphic novel about Last Stand of the Tin Can Sailors. We link that in the description below. That has some of the pictures showing drawings of the American ships with Japanese colored dye packs firing at them. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below for more ways you can donate to support the museum. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about the museum and our channel. Thanks for watching.